Hi, everybody, and away we go with another edition of the Stampede Wrestling Show.
Live from the studios of Heartbeat Radio in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, home of the world-famous Hart Wrestling family. Welcome to Heartbeat Radio. We have a great show for you this afternoon. This is Bob Johnson, Adrian Street, and his beautiful manageress, Miss Linda. They'll be on shortly. But first of all, I'd like to introduce our co-host. He is a renowned New York City radio personality. He's the associate producer of The Wrestler. Welcome to Heartbeat Radio, Mr. Evan Ginzberg.
Thank you, Bob. It's always an honor to be on. And, of course, I want to bring on the host of the show, Bruce Hart. How are you today, Bruce?
I'm good, Evan. Thank you very much for joining us.
We are honored to have one of the all-time greats, one of the most charismatic, colorful pioneers. David Bowie recently passed, and you were doing a similar dress and style as Bowie back in the 70s. I remember you fondly. Adrian Street. We are honored to have you on Heartbeat Radio.
I'll tell you what I wanted to ask you before anything else, and I'd like you to sort of relay my best wishes, is to your brother Smith. I heard that he's been diagnosed with prostate cancer, and the thing is, I'm a cancer survivor myself. I had throat cancer back in 2001, and the doctor alerted me he was supposed to be like top of his line and all the rest of it. And after they got the results of my diagnosis, he said to me, "Mr. Street, I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm going to give it to you straight. You're not going to make it out of this, Mr. Street. I suggest you go home, put your affairs in order." And my response to that was, "I ain't dying yet, mate. There's too many people in the world I haven't pissed off yet." And I think I'm sure it is that positive attitude that made a difference between me not being here about 15 years ago, and actually being here now, still as fit as a fiddle and as strong as a bloody horse. Because the thing is, the treatments that they've got now are far better than they were 15 years ago when I was diagnosed with that awful disease. So
I very much appreciate those kind words, Adrian. I'll relate them to him. I know he was a big fan of yours, and that'll mean a lot coming from you.
Mr. Street, since we're on the subject of health, I've seen pictures of you, and you are in tremendous shape. What secrets can you share with the audience?
Well, I'll tell you my secret, but nobody's going to like it. It's very low carb, and I don't eat any grains of any kind. And that means no bread. It means no pasta. It means no rice. I don't miss most of those things. But it's funny because Linda just experimented today with a new kind of bread that I might be able to eat, because I do miss bread, to tell you the truth. And it's made basically from whey protein and a few other things. So that should be good. But the thing is, when I came over to Canada, it's funny, when I started in my career, everybody said to me, "You're too small and you're too young. You can't be a professional wrestler." I mean, my dad had me out of school working in the coal mine when I was 15. I didn't like that too much because I needed a spotlight. It was bloody dark down there. So I ran away from home when I was 16 and became a professional wrestler in 1957 when I was 16. But I was told by the big-time promoters at that time, "You're too small, you can't be a professional wrestler, be a jockey." And the funny thing is, when I decided to leave Britain with my quest to wrestle in the States, everybody, including the other wrestlers, said, "You're too small, you can't wrestle in Canada, and you can't wrestle in the States. That's the land of giants. You know, you're too small and you're too old." Because I was actually 40 years of age before I ever left Britain. But whenever I came to Canada, I tried to put weight on, and I actually got my weight up to 216 pounds. The heaviest I've ever been in my life is when I worked with you, Bruce. I've never been that heavy before or since. But the thing is,
you were still good. You were still in good shape up here, though. You know, it's funny you say that, Adrian, because like you were saying, up till around that time, North America was always heavyweights. You know, these big 250, 300-pound guys. And I remember when I went to England to wrestle, I was just sort of pretty green then, and I think 77, and I saw some of the best workers I ever saw in my life over there, and most of them were small guys like Jimmy Breaks and Steve Logan and Mick McManus and some of those other ones that you were mentioning, you know, and I was completely blown away at what incredible workers they were, and the thing I really liked about the British wrestlers, there was no bullshit, you know, there was no gimmicks, so they didn't have all the smoke and mirrors and all. They used to just work, and the heels over there they just do one thing, you know, break the rules once all night and get incredible heat, and you know, that made a huge impression on me, and I started bringing some of the English guys over, including like Dynamite Kid and Marty Jones and Steve Wright and yourself, and almost every one of the English guys that came over here became a big star, you know, and they kind of revolutionized our territory because it wasn't all about size then. It was, you know, more about kind of skill and their ability to get over, you know, and it really played a part. And it's guys like yourself who were the pioneers or the guys who set the stage later on for people like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk and some of those guys who they weren't that big, but they became as big as stars as anyone in the WWE or anywhere else, you know. And
well,
you know,
like yourself, we sold quality, not quantity. Most of the time I was in the States, my weight sort of fluctuated anywhere between about 190 and about 205. But then once I really got over, I thought to myself, well, I don't really need this weight because they're looking for me. I sort of got down to a more comfortable weight, and I wrestled for quite a while, around about 185. Then later on, I decided, like, if they want me, because I got to the stage then I didn't mind if I wrestled or if I didn't wrestle. But I was still in great demand, and I thought to myself, I'm going to weigh what I want. And for my last contest, which was last year, after 57 years as a professional and 15,000 professional matches, I actually went in the ring weighing 155 pounds. With a new way of eating and a new way of working out that I've got, I actually, you know, cutting out any gluten and cutting out any grain and salt and sugar and anything along those lines. Not only did I get my weight down to 155, I actually lost 6.5 inches off my waist while I was doing it. Just last week, I got the results of some blood work I did, and the doctor said to me, I said, what was the results of my blood work? He said, fantastic. He said, listen, I won't insult you by saying it was fantastic for your age. He said it was fantastic, period. He said, if you were 20 years of age, he said it would be excellent.
I hear you had the Skull Crushers training thing down there. What was some of the advice you'd give to smaller guys like Evan was saying? You were like one of the all-time great showmen, one of the guys who had that charisma and ability to work a crowd and get heat and knew all the and ring psychology. What were some of the things you would have imparted to a young guy breaking in, you know, that the things that were important and the things that they needed to focus on rather than some of the stuff that they did focus on?
Well, I said, in a nutshell, be the best you can be. Don't leave anything to chance. Whenever you go to see a promoter, you're going to see a number of promoters, like from the small time to hopefully to the big time. Be the best you can be. Always make sure that the first impression that you make is the one that can make it or break you right off the bat. it's funny because at that particular time, during that particular time when I was running the school, they started doing this bloody stupid hardcore stuff, which I think is bloody ludicrous. It's almost as bad as Lucha Libre. But
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but you get guys like wearing like dirty T-shirts and sort of jeans with holes in them and all the rest of it. That is not being professional, and I'm not saying it because we still make costumes and everything like that for all kinds of show. There's people, mainly wrestlers. But the thing is, why would anybody, why would you insult people by wearing stuff that like a scruffy homeless person would wear? Go in the ring and be professional. If you want to be a star, look like one, dress like one, act like one.
Yeah, that's very good advice.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed before, Adrian, and you could maybe comment on it, was over in England, those were some of the best workers I've ever seen, and they used to get more mileage out of just mostly just wrestling. There was no artificial additives, you never saw gimmicks and tables and chairs and ladders and foreign objects and all that other stuff. All you ever saw over there was wrestling. And over in England, as you probably remember, they only used to have maximum of 4 matches on a card. Yeah. So the guys had to put in some time, and they would go out there and work. I remember it was the round system over there, but it was pretty regular to go 4, 5, 6 rounds and long matches, and hardly any healing and cheap heat and any of that stuff. And you'd never see them going out on the floor and smashing guys into the timekeeper's table and going out and wading into the crowd or any of that. It was always just simple stuff, but it was like an art form over there. You were one of the most over heels ever in England back in the 70s. You were kind of a legend. I remember when I was over there, we used to talk in awe about you, and I think Bobby Barnes, who was, I think, your partner or whatever, is part of the Hells Angels or whatever. But what were some of the things that you found enabled you to work a crowd or get your stuff over that didn't require all the additives and all like that?
Well, the thing is, the business was wrestling. It was called wrestling, and that's what you're supposed to do. It isn't like fall through a table, climb a ladder, climb up a pole, or anything like that. It was wrestling, and that is what you did. The thing is, yourself, like, from knowing people like John Foley. We wrestled a lot with members of the Snake Pit, Billy Riley's gym in Wigan. And the thing is, when I first started wrestling for Dale Martins, I was wrestling regularly 40 times a month. I'd be wrestling in different arenas. I'd be wrestling in the same arenas 2 or 3 times. But you can bet your life that at least half of the opponents I had in those days were from Wigan. Now, people imagine, because I can sort of go a bit if I want, that I was actually trained in Snake Pit in Wigan. I'll tell you now. I mean, I could boast that I had, and nobody'd know the difference. But I've never been inside a building. But I've been in the ring 4, 5, 6 times a week sometimes with people who had, and I tell you what, they had an attitude. They wasn't as gentle or as nice as John Foley was. I mean, John Foley could rip you a new arsehole, but he wouldn't do it. He never took advantage of people unless they really asked for it. Now, those guys wouldn't give you anything unless you could take it. So you had to learn to bloody well wrestle, or you'd be eating their dust, So, I mean, the thing is, you had to do it. I was fortunate enough. I mean, like I say, I was born in South Wales in a place called Bryn Mawr. Bryn Mawr means big hill, and it was known locally as the Hills of Fire and Iron. And I had some hard guys there. My great-grandfather was a mountain fighter. What they call like a mountain fighter isn't sort of like your Daniel Boone or anything like that. But boxing in those days, or fighting in those days, was against the law. But you could go out, if you went outside the town or the city limits, then you could do it. I mean, even the police would sort of turn up and sort of watch it. I had a great-grandfather called Jim Arnold, Big Jim Arnold. The fighting men, I mean, you could wrestle, you could anything that you could do to your opponent apart from hit him with something, as long as you used your body, anything went. They would actually scratch a line. They'd scratch a line in the dirt. If you ever heard that saying, like, you know, it's something up to scratch, you know, that means, you know, if you're going to buy a car, you'd say, is it up to scratch? You know, will it do the job? Is it still sort of fit to do what it's supposed to do? Well, that is where the actual saying came from, because they'd scratch a line in there. If you and I were fighting, you might knock me out. That is not the end of the fight. They dragged me back to my corner for an allotted period. If they could bring me around and bring me back to the scratch line, bring me up to scratch, then the fight would continue. That would just be the end of one round. And that would carry on. I might knock you out 3 times, and like as long as you could get back to that scratch line after an allotted period, then we'd carry on the fight. My great-grandfather, Big Jim Arnold, had a fight with somebody, cowboy something or another. I still don't know who won, but what I do know is they fought all day until it was too dark to see. People were lighting matches, people were lighting pieces of paper and holding it up. Anyway, they had to shake hands and agree to come back the next day. They came back the next morning to continue their fight. They actually had a fight that lasted a day and a half. And that is the mentality of the people from the town I came from. So I was always sort of fighting. I was fighting with gypsies. I mean, some of those gyppos. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Snatch with Brad Pitt. He played a fantastic pikey. Well, South Wales is full of them, and we were fighting those guys all the time. And I'm telling you something, those guys could fight. They could fight like hell. And then, of course, there's the bloody miners, especially when they've had a drink or two. I was fighting with the coal miners up on the slag heaps all the time. And I tell you what, I can fight. A lot of people didn't like the way I fought, but just like I told them, it doesn't matter how you win as long as you cheat.
What was your impressions, Adrian, of that Wigan, that kind of half shooting mindset? I remember a lot of the guys used to kind of have issues with people like Billy Robinson and some of those other guys that came out of Wigan, Billy Joyce and some of them. Did you ever have anything like that happen to you, or any of those guys had taken liberties or trying to shoot under the guys that are working or any of that stuff?
A little bit to start off with, because I was Mike Dimitri was my manager when I started wrestling for Dale Martin's the big time, and we had to give him 10%. And all of the wrestlers, when they got to hear of this, they said like, oh, you know, I mean, this Mike Dimitri is managing guys, there's the 10%ers and everything like that. And Dale Martin's and what have you are bringing those in to keep the wages down of the other guys. Like we would sort of replace them and all that kind of stuff.
That was kind of a common complaint where I think Robinson was one of the main guys they always talked about would take liberties or was shooting in the ring.
There's one thing about that. Have you noticed guys like Billy Robinson? I like Billy. I like Carl Gotch. But have you noticed how if Billy and Carl Gotch are wrestling each other, they don't sort of full stance?
Yeah.
I mean, Billy and Carl Gotch were only too pleased to show how tough they were when they were wrestling somebody who wasn't a shooter.
Yeah. I always thought Billy was one of the best workers I ever saw. It was kind of almost a shame that some of that kind of tarnished his reputation, you know, that stuff, you know, the fight with Peter Maivia and some of the other stuff that was attached to him, because I think people almost overlook what an incredible worker he was. You know, he was like one of the best pure baby faces I think I've ever seen. And I'm not sure if you knew that other guy. He was a bit after that, named Steve Wright.
Oh, I know Steve very well. In actual fact, I wrestled with Steve when he was just 15 years of age.
He had a bit of a rep, too, you know, that kind of tarnished his image a bit, where, you know, people said he was trying to shoot in the ring and that kind of thing, you know.
the guy that brought Steve in was a guy called Ted Betley, who was also a good friend of mine. But Ted Betley got under his sort of working one time, and he said, like, tell him that, you don't want to lose to anybody. That's the way you're going to make a name for yourself, Steve. And he was on with me one night. I've had wrestled a lot better with matches, and he said to the promoter, maybe Adrian ought to get disqualified, or I ought to win for a change. He said,
yeah.
No. He says, because he said Adrian's already got a name. And I said to him, Steve, I got a name through working my bloody arse off and working hard. I suggest you do the same thing. I said, I'm going to wrestle you with you tonight and show you. And Ted Betley was standing there. I know it was Ted Betley that actually put him up to saying it, I said, I'm going to wrestle with you tonight. I said, and show you how far your fucking shooting is going to get you. Because the thing is, I can fight, and it's funny because I used to win a lot of fights when I was still living in Wales. I mean, cage fighting was sort of not known at the time or anything like that. But by accident, by somebody actually doing it to me, one of my friends actually doing it to me one time, I learned how to do a guillotine before guillotine was a guillotine. And that is something that I used to like to do. I love fighting with boxers. I'm not a boxer myself. I mean, I boxed on a fairground booth. When I was starving to death, when I went to London first, I was actually boxing regularly on a fairground booth. I was boxing anywhere between 4 and 7 times in one day. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not a boxer. I can't box. I can fight. But I was gonna pay thing. If a guy was a good boxer, I would get a hiding maybe 4 to 7 times in one day. And what I actually got for that was about $2. About the equivalent, I'm saying one English pound, or if I did a 6-round contest instead of a 3-round contest, I'd get £6. But
some of the listeners out there might not be familiar with Ted Betley, but he was the guy who started both Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy, and you and Davey Boy started the very same night in Calgary, and Ted Betley was over here, and he was a huge fan of yours. He would rave to any of the wrestlers about you being one of the top 2 or 3 heels he had ever seen in England, and he was always extolling all your virtues. And I remember both Dynamite and Davey Boy were huge fans of yours. They had utmost respect, and they always used to tell me how much of an influence you had on them, just when they were young breaking in, and you were a huge idol of theirs. They used to look up to you and try to copy your, especially later on when he turned heel. Dynamite was always alluding to the influence you had made on him, and that you had, had been a good friend of Ted Betley and all, and he always credited you with a lot of some of the working things that enabled him to become a star, and anyone who saw him in that era probably would know what I'm talking about. He was like one of the great workers of all time at that time.
Well, when I worked for Stampede, my 2 favorite opponents the whole time I was there, actually, were Davey Boy and yourself.
Adrian, I got Smith Hart on the air now.
Did he say that was Smith?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Smith, I'm counting on you getting yourself better.
They heard Bob's voice, Bob Johnson's voice. They got very excited, agitated almost, but the master's going to lock him up.
Lock the dogs up. Everything is on worldwide. Okay.
Adrian, do you remember Carl Moffat, Big Butch Moffat, that jumped in the ring one night unannounced? He was just a big mark in the cheap seats, but he got down the ringside and jumped in, and you and Linda and your other protege, Jude Rosenblum, kicked the shit out, and he asked for something, and Linda spiked him in the back with her spiked heels, and you scissored him hard or something, and then the ushers threw him out unceremoniously. But not too long after that, I gave him his first match something. But anyway, I remember I enjoyed hearing him whimpering about how he got ganged in the ring by you 3 guys.
I was watching it on TV a while back, and we had a near riot in the ring on Friday night one time, and Linda was stomping on his head with the she had the high heels, and
Well, I tell you what,
I remember that quite well. And he was about 260 pounds, and I remember you and Linda kicked the living hell out of him, and Linda was something. My dad was greatly impressed at Linda putting the boots to this guy.
But in actual fact, that was Jason Moffat. He later became like Jason the Terrible or something like that.
Yeah, Carl Moffat was his name, yeah. I remember that. And I remember him telling me later on, he was a mark at that time, but he told me he was terrified. He said he saw this fire in Linda's eyes, and she had the high heels going. And he said my dad was probably the most impressed, though he used to regale everyone for years after that. Linda was kicking the shit out of this big bastard, and I was fearing for his life. I thought she might kill him, and all like that.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you how impressed your dad was. He gave Linda $50, and you know that you know the chances of that happening.
We had another guy in here years later, a few years after that, Adrian, and he was a huge fan of yours. Said he worked with you quite a bit down in the States. A guy named Rip Rogers.
Well, I tell you what, Rip and I had the best feud going. In actual fact, he was the first real feud that I did after they turned Linda and I into baby faces in the Continental area. He came in as a heel. He had Brenda Britton with him, and I mean, we had a hell of a run.
I remember you always used to have some green guys you were working with up here, and you were always a pretty good sounding board for them, and used to give a lot of them good advice, and it was very well appreciated.
I have another gentleman listening in, the great hustler Rip Rogers, one of the greatest trainers of wrestlers anywhere on the planet Earth.
I'm sure our listeners are well aware of Rip's long and colorful history in the business. He certainly had a great run up in Calgary, and he was also one of the main trainers in the Ohio Valley and for the WWE. So he was responsible for turning out a lot of the biggest stars in the WWE present day ones. So I'm looking forward to hearing just some of those perspectives and to hear some of the stories about he and Adrian and their colorful kind of background back in the 80s. And tell me, Rip, when did you first hook up with Adrian? That was before you ever made it up to Calgary, wasn't it?
I talked to Robert Fuller, and he said, "Hey, come up here and shoot this angle with Adrian and see what happens." So we went up there and shot an angle in Birmingham, and 6 months later, I was still working with Adrian every show. So we had a hell of a run. We had a hell of a run there. And then when I got done working with Adrian, I got the hell out of Dodge because, hey, I ain't gonna follow that act. It was just so easy and so different that I'd have been backtracking. And at the time, there was so many other places to go. I wanted to learn different styles, see different TVs, see different angles and whatever, just to learn and travel.
Were you guys both working the same style then, Rip? Or I remember when you came up to Calgary and you were kind of doing a similar character to Adrian.
Adrian had been been doing the straight queer gimmick as a heel. Then he turned babyface, so everybody loved him. So I come in with Pink, whatever, blah, 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 and I accused him of being a queer. And they said, "No, he's not, you are." So he hit me with the purse and whatever, blah, blah, blah. We had a good time, but it's just a hell of a rib. But now he was homosexual, but it was okay because he was a homosexual hillbilly.
My old buddy Keith Franks, better known as Adrian Adonis, had kind of fallen from favor down there in WWF, and he kind of returned and did that exotic Adrian Adonis thing. I guess he had seen Adrian or maybe caught him.
Well, he was probably, when Adrian first come to L.A., I think Keith Franks was there. He probably saw Adrian firsthand
He had a pretty good run in there, is doing kind of the Adrian Adonis thing, which is more of a rib, you know. It was almost like a kind of a practical joke, but he got it over, though, you know, which was amazing, given, you know, most people almost forgot that he had been doing the thing with Dick Murdoch before, where they were wearing the biker jackets, and he wasn't playing anything the least bit, you know, gay or anything like that.
Yeah, Adrian Adonis was the tough guy. Yeah, I think they got mad at him because of he let his weight get real high, you know, but he could still work and he could still go. But Vince was such a body freak that he was going to punish Adrian and make him do the queer gimmick, right?
Yeah.
But Adrian ribbed him back by making a success of it, you know. So he had a hell of a run. Piper shaved his head and everything, but he just played it off, and it was just a rib, and he made a hell of a lot of money. So what the hell, right?
When did you first hook up with Adrian? Then, Rip, was that what year was that?
Adrian Street or Adrian Adonis?
Oh, Adrian Street.
Okay, I met Adrian for Fuller in '86.
That must have been just before you came up to Calgary.
Well, I went to Continental, then I went to Kansas City, and then I went to South Africa, and an angel in Savita called your dad, I think, or called you or whatever, but QB got me booked in Calgary because I wanted to go there. And then when I went there, I saw everybody there was goddamn. I said, "This is fucking cake." Everybody there was trying to be Dynamite Kid, right?
There was Benoit and Pillman and Owen and a bunch of those guys up here at that time.
Mhm. So they were imitating their heroes and stuff. So I said, "This is great. I can either be a total carny hillbilly or do a half gay thing and be real different than everybody." And you told me
and you did a hell of a job. You got it over. I remember you and Kerry Brown, who was kind of looking for, he needed to have a facelift or whatever at that time. You guys had a hell of a run.
That was a hell of a facelift for Kerry because he hated it. I fucking loved it. I just fucking laughed. I said, Kerry, quit being a goddamn mark. Get with it.
I remember you guys were doing that Midnight Cowboys thing, and got over pretty good. You guys.
Well, we just did what you told us. You had me smoking a cigarette. You knew I couldn't smoke a cigarette. I'd get sick, so I'd have that Victory cigarette or whatever. And then Kerry hated wearing that pink shit, so I fucking loved it. And I'd rib on him every time and told him to make sure you put that shit on. Bruce loves that fucking pink. He gets so fucking mad, and I just fucking laugh. I said, Kerry, you're still a goddamn mark. What the fuck's the matter with you?
Yeah, you'd figure he would have known better, but I agree, but, to his credit and to your credit, you guys did pretty damn good business. I know when Pillman and I were tagging, that was probably some of the best matches we had was with you and Kerry.
Kerry was a great worker and was a rough and rugged guy. So then for him to blend and sort of go to the effeminate side was a big shock to the fans, but he knew what you guys could do, and he knew what you would want for your style more than I was, because I had, but you guys at that time you worked a lot of almost like a Japanese style. You know what I mean?
Oh, there was a lot of Japs up here at that time. Hossie and Hashimoto and Liger, I think. Kichi Yamada was up here then, and to your credit, that was a pretty high octane style of work at that time. All those Owen and Benoit and Pillman, and they were and the Japs. They were doing a lot of suplexes and a lot of high octane stuff. It wasn't grab a hold and hold it for 5 minutes and stuff like that. But you fit right into it pretty good. There was I think you were probably one of the hottest tag teams we had in that era. You told me that you knew way back in the early days it was old Randy Poffo or Randy Savage. You knew him a bit back in Mobile or Alabama, somewhere in that area.
Well, me and Randy pretty much lived together about 4 or 5 years.
Did you work with Randy much in those days? They sort of had a little bit of an outlaw.
I worked for Emile Dupre, right, in the 70s. And
up in New Brunswick.
Randy got me booked for Nashville for Nick Goulas. And then his dad booked me in Mississippi for Frankie Kane. And then Randy told me to come back, and we made 10 tapes for the can. So then I went out to Oregon and worked, and then Randy told me to come back because he wanted me to buy in. And I didn't want to fucking buy in because I was young, stupid, and I just wanted to learn how to work and travel around and bang girls and do whatever, right? So, but Randy was pretty convincing, so I come back and I stayed there for probably about 3 years, and then I was a business partner with him. It was me, Randy, Lanny, Angelo, and then Ronnie Garvin, and at one time it was Randy Orton's dad, Bob Orton Jr., and Bob Roop, and in the early days it was Boris Malenko.
What parts of the South were you guys mostly working in? Alabama and
at the time then, we lived in Lexington, and we were the outlaws to everybody. Hell, we ran against Barnett, we ran against Ron Fuller, we ran against Dick the Bruiser, we ran against the Sheik, we ran against Jerry Garrett, we ran against Bob Geisel, you name it, against Geisel. We had like 13 TV markets and didn't give a shit. And I remember one time we even had 3 towns booked on a Saturday night. That's how, we was like Calgary. We had the heel band, the babyface band. We had a ring on the west end, a ring on the east end, a spot show ring, and a ring in Johnson City. So
I remember hearing Rip of a few times where. I can't remember if Barry Orton was telling me about it or whoever, but he said they would show up at some of the Barnett's shows or Goulas' shows or whoever's, and like Bob Orton, who's half tough, Bob Orton Jr., they're all considered half tough, though. I remember hearing of where they would show up at the other guys' shows and challenge them to a shoot and stuff like that.
And they were all tough guys. Now, I sure as hell wasn't. I was a lover, not a fighter. I was a performer, goddammit. Hey, I'm in this have a good time. And I think they wanted to fight all the time. I said, what the hell's the matter with you guys?
Was Lanny on board at that time too, Rip? Or?
Oh, yeah, he was there. Yeah, he was there the whole time.
And was Randy, he was already doing the Randy Savage then, or was he a Poffo still in at that time?
No, he was Randy Savage. He was Randy Savage, I think, when he was in Atlanta before, and then when he went to Nick Goulas before he went to the Maritimes in summer of '78. I went over and worked in Austria and Germany and England, and then they said, can you do the poof gimmick? So then I did it in Japan, too. In Japan, they were beating the shit out of me. I said, fuck this. I'm just going into a queer gimmick. So I became Adrian. So all of a sudden, everybody else was killing themselves, and I'm not breaking a sweat and having a good time. And so when I'm in Austria and Germany, I go there as a heel, and they said, can you do the Adrian Street gimmick? I said, well, nothing like him, but I can do it. So I did that. So the whole time I was there, hell, they pigeonholed me into being a babyface queer. So once again, I didn't break a sweat. And I had nothing but a good time and got a bunch of dildos as presents and shit. But but it was comedy relief.
I'll tell you what, that Germany was a trip, wasn't it? I mean, was that great or what? After all the traveling we did, that had 4,500 people in the arena every night, 7 nights a week, and they actually gave me a mobile home to live in. That was about 10 steps away from the dressing room door.
Me and Adrian worked pretty much about 26 weeks in a row. I think there was 3 spot shows where we didn't work. As soon as I quit working with him, I got the hell out of Dodge because I knew anything I did from there, it was going to be, the shits. Because the other one was so easy. and so different that I knew that I was just going to backtrack, so I got the hell out of Dodge.
I tell you what, you and Brenda were like a night off. I'm telling you, it was. I mean, I really look forward to every contest. I doubt we ever had a bad contest.
Well, it's like Robert Fuller said, "Hey, come up here and we'll shoot this angle and we'll run with it and see what the hell happens." 6 months later, we were still running with some bitch. This is when we had all those weekly towns, So, and none of the matches were ever the same. It was just go with the flow. We never had a crossword. We never had any miscommunication. I don't think we ever broke a sweat. It was just fun.
That was what I call maximum reaction to minimum effort.
Yeah.
Who was the heel rip and who was the face? What was what were the storylines about?
Well, Adrian had been such a hot-ass heel there, and then he turned face. Now, Adrian can tell you about it because it was before I got there, but I think Adrian saved Bob Armstrong hitting it with the purse and everything, if I remember right. So Adrian was full-fledged babyface. So I come in wearing pink, and, of course, they're calling me the things what you're not supposed to call them. And I'm saying, no, I'm a man. Adrian Street, he's the one. He's the one, Oh, no, he's one of us now,
Adrian, this is Bob. I got a call here from Lancaster, England, from Mr. Cliff Fletcher in Lancaster, England. He said, can he ask Adrian about Bert Acerati?
Bert would happily kill you. If you wrestled with Bert, you were going to bleed, and he didn't believe in any other way but the hard way and what have you. He didn't care what you did to him. In actual fact, if you split him open and made him bleed, he loved it. But the thing is, I'll tell you a quick thing about Bert. Any foreigners that came to the country, especially Americans who'd heard about Bert, when they came over, they wanted it written in their contract that they didn't want to wrestle with anybody from Wigan. They didn't want to wrestle any Wiganers from the Snake Pit. But top of the card was they would not wrestle with Bert Acerati. Not only that, in 1957, Lou Says was main event at the Royal Albert Hall against Dara Singh from India. He was the Indian heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
They did a 60-minute draw. When the contest was over, who should waddle up to the ring but like 5'6", 265-pound Bert Acerati, who was quite an old man by then, and he challenged Lou Says to a contest for his world championship. The contest never took place. And a number of years later, I got to be a good friend of Lou Says, and I asked Lou Says about it. I said, "What happened there?" He said, "Oh, I would have wrestled him." He said, "No chance." He said, no doubt about it. I would have wrestled him, but he never did, and Bert was never ever hard to find. Nobody, you're asking me about Bert Acerati, nobody wanted to wrestle with Bert. And I tell you what, if you really want to know about Bert, get my books, My Pink Gas Mask, and I only laugh when it hurts, because I've written just about everything I know about Bert Acerati in those books. You can get them on Amazon, Kindle, and Nook.
And I got a call here from a guy named Johnny, and he's calling from London. He's got a question to Adrian. What influenced your style? And he asked me about your relationship with Dusty Rhodes and whether or not Goldust used your influence to create that character of Goldust.
The last one is hardly worth answering because it's bloody obvious, isn't it? But I mean, the thing is, I don't care that he did because it's too good a gimmick to waste. And it shows that Dustin was a lot more impressed with my style of wrestling than he was with his dad. The first time I ever wrestled Dusty Rhodes is when I went down to wrestle for Eddie Graham's group in Lower Florida, and Dusty was the booker and matchmaker down there. But I got kind of double-crossed by J.J. Dillon was my manager at the time, and his head was so far up that he dusted his arse at the time. It's a wonder Dusty didn't choke. He told me to say some really sort of, when I was doing an interview and everything like that, he told me to say some really, how can I say, personal sort of things and everything like that. Like, your big fat face, you couldn't climb up the pole and get that scissors and cut my hair. Even if I let you, your big fat sloppy body with your big fat sloppy face. I wasn't comfortable saying that, but he persuaded, JJ persuaded me. He said, that is what this Dusty wants, that's what he asked you to say. As soon as I went back in the room with a monitor and saw Dusty's face, I knew that JJ had double-crossed me. I was getting over just a bit too much for his liking with Dusty. But anyway, Dusty went nuts and didn't like it at all. But then he challenged me from the dressing room. You don't say this, you don't say that, I'm the boss and all the rest of it. And unfortunately, you wave a red flag at me, I'm just like a bull, I'll run for it. So instead of not sort of saying anything like that, I started calling him Busty Rose, the American Queen, and that was kind of the end of our relationship.
I've got another question for you too here from Pierre in Victoria. Gives a few thoughts about the Wigan gym.
I used to wrestle with people from the Wigan gym. I mean, Bruce knows John Foley very well. I've never set foot inside the place, but I was wrestling. When I started wrestling for Dale Martin, I was wrestling, for joint promotions, I was wrestling on average about 40 times a month because I was doing doubles and everything like that. And you can bet your life, especially in the early days, that half of those contests would have been against somebody from Wigan. And I'll tell you something, whenever you wrestle with those guys, you had a fight on your hand. You had to learn to wrestle. You had to learn to really wrestle and tough it out, or they would swallow you. Unfortunately enough for me, I'm very good at fighting. I'm not sort of saying boxing, but I'm talking about fighting. I don't care who it is. You fight with me, you're going to bleed, and you're not going to want to do it again. The first guy that actually taught me shoot wrestling was a Greek Canadian named Mike Dimitri. I mean, you may have heard of it.
Yeah, he was an old shooter.
Mike Dimitri was a junior heavyweight shoot champion of the world. And he was my manager in the early days, and I said to him, Mike, I said, you need to teach me as much as I can possibly learn because you've been protecting your own asset. I said, it's in your own interest, so teach me whatever you know. And he taught me how to shoot wrestling, but it was George Kidd, who was one hell of a shooter, and he's the guy that learned from Mike Dimitri when Mike Dimitri was in his prime. When Mike Dimitri taught me, Mike was quite an old man. Mind you, I still couldn't beat him. I learned from George Kidd. George Kidd learned from Mike Dimitri, and he also went to Norman Morrell. Norman Morrell was in the 1936 Olympics.
Yeah, he was a middleweight.
He was also a promoter in Britain.
Yeah, he was crony of Ted Beresford and Rowisco and those guys.
He spent a long time training with Norman Morrell, and from Norman Morrell he went to the Snake Pit, and he learned all he could ever learn. Now George Kidd and I, when we first wrestled each other, we didn't like each other at all, but we realized after the very first contest that we had that I was something that was good for him, and we became very, very good friends. And he taught me more. George Kidd was the best technical wrestler I have ever seen in my life. And bearing in mind that I was crazy about wrestling long before I ever had my first professional contest. I had my first professional contest in London when I was 16 in 1957.
I remember being in there myself, I was there back in 77 or some such thing with Dynamite and Ted Bentley and some of those guys, but it wasn't much to it.
Adrian, it's Smith Hart. Just interrupting here. When I re-met Paddy Barrett in Las Vegas when he was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, he mentioned that some private investor or wrestling fancier had paid for a private match between Billy Joyce and Billy Riley, and one or the other, I can't remember which one, won it after at least an hour or two. Was one of them relaxed to one of them had him in some kind of scissor submission of some sort, but at that time when he took a breath, that's when one guy escaped and reversed it or something. But Paddy, who had worked for us and in Vancouver when he was in Canada, related that in great detail. But we were both drinking beers and enjoying the ambience of the hotel in Las Vegas. But I just thought I'd interject that. He was always talking about the three Billies, Robinson, Joyce, and Riley. But
and Adrian, I've got another text message here from Harold in Mississauga, Ontario. If you could maybe tell the audience a little bit about Jimmy Briggs, Max Crabtree, and Bobby Barnes.
Jimmy Briggs is one of my best. Is another one of my favorite British opponents.
He was always raving about you being one of his favorite opponents.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice to know. I won't waste my time talking about Max Crabtree.
Adrian Smith Hart again. I wanted to ask you, did you have the pleasure of meeting gentleman Jim Lewis?
He was a moron who brought Jimmy Savile into the business.
I heard about his prodigious endowment and his charm with ladies.
We don't know about that. Jimmy Savile wrestled with me once, and I put paid to his career. I put him right out of the business, and he was. Everybody knows now that he was a raving child molester and everything like that. It could have, if he hadn't died, he probably would have been. He probably would have been sentenced to 1,000 years in prison.
I got another tweet here from. This is our good friend Don up in Manchester, England. He wants to know if you ever worked for Brian Dixon.
I worked for just about everybody over there. After I left John Promotions, I wasn't getting the money I wanted from John Promotions or the money I deserved. So I actually left because I got an offer from Ori Williams. After the rent was paid on the arena, the posters were paid for, the newspapers were paid for, and the wrestlers were paid, I got 50% of everything that came through the door. So I went from wrestling from getting £35 a night for joint promotions, which is much as they would pay for like regular shows. Obviously, I got a lot more for the bigger shows. But that's as much as I could get out of them for the smaller shows. I went to earning something like $1,500 a week. But Jackie Pallow started promotion, and I worked for his promotion. I worked for Brian Dixon's promotion. Lots of small promotions, but willing to pay me big money. You know, I would get like £100 a night from anybody.
You were the influence on a lot of the costumes being created by a lot of current wrestlers. If you could quickly...
a lot of current wrestlers and a lot of pop stars.
And pop stars, I'm sorry. Yeah.
We made all the costumes for Mickey Rourke in the movie The Wrestler. We make a lot of stuff for circus people, but we also make a lot of costumes for lots of different wrestlers. I mean, we made all Dude Love stuff and everything like that for Mick Foley.
I'm told, Adrian, that you also have written several best-selling books.
The first book I wrote is called My Pink Gas Mask, and it's after the gas mask that I was issued during the war. I was given it when I was 3 years of age. And that was like whenever they dropped the gas bombs on us, because my hobbies in those days was I used to go up in the mountains, up in the hills in Wales, all around the town that I was born in, looking for Red Indians, because I thought that's where they lived. I wanted to be a Red Indian. And the other hobby I had was I'd go up on a mountain, so I'd pick up a piece of a German airplane. I was always trying to find a piece with a swastika on it of German airplanes that had been shot down, say, the night before. And there'd be swamps and bogs up in the mountains. I'd go there and I'd sort of pull live bombs out that had landed in the mud and hadn't exploded. And I used to save all those. I used to keep those behind an outside bathroom that we had. I had them hidden out there, a big stack of unexploded bombs that I was going to give to my tribe of Indians whenever I found them, so we could fasten them to our arrows and shoot them at the covered wagons and blow them apart so we could run right in and kill everybody instead of running round and round and round like they did in Hollywood, getting picked off. Now, my second book is called I Only Laugh When It Hurts, and that was after I'd left the coal mines and run away from home and tried to get my start in Britain. When I first started wrestling during that period, I wrestled as Kid Tarzan Jonathan, after Don Lear Jonathan, who was my idol at the time.
Oh, yeah.
In actual fact, Don Lear Jonathan was my best man when Linda and I got married back in 2005. He was my best man, and the guy that actually married us, Jason Saunderson, an ordained Catholic bishop, used to wrestle professionally as the Wolfman. My third book is called So Many Ways to Hurt You. That's after like a response that I have. You know when the guys get on television and they say, I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to do that to you, I'm going to do something else. My response was, well, I hope that you've really tuned into your wrestling skills there, dear chap, because when you come in the ring with me, you'll find that I've got so many ways to hurt you, you'll have to invent new ways to scream. And that's where that title came from. And I also used that on a documentary that was done on my life story by Jeremy Della. And that's gone all around the world. It's done originally for a big film festival I had down in Rio de Janeiro, where it ran for 7 months. But it's been all around the world since then. That was my third book. My fourth book is called Sadist in Sequins. That includes some of the movies and everything like that I've been in myself. Then Imagine What I Can Do to You is also the title track of the song I used to go into the ring to. And that is after I left during promotions. Linda became a wrestler. And I was also in the film Quest for Fire with Ray Don Chong, Everett McGill, and Ron Perlman. Ron Perlman, Hellboy, and Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that's what that book was, Imagine What I Can Do to You. Then the first book I wrote after I left Britain and actually came to work for you, and then sort of went on to sort of wrestle in Mexico and in Germany and in the States. And that's called Violence is Golden. Violence is golden to me. Violence is what I like to see. There's something which I can't explain, but I love agony and pain because violence is golden to me. And then the last book I wrote is called Merchants of Menace, and that's from a title track as well. There's a photograph on the back page where I'm beating the living crap out of Randy Savage. There's blood everywhere. Merchant of Menace was also the title of one of my other songs. It goes like, I'm a merchant of menace, purveyor of pain. No quality or mercy in the name of my game. I get my pound of flesh with every stranglehold. To me, all that glitters is definitely gold. And it kind of goes on from there,
Those are some incredible titles, Adrian. I'm impressed. I'm sure Shakespeare's probably smiling somewhere up yonder, thinking The Merchant of Venice. That's maybe a better title than The Merchant of Venice. So.
Was I going to say the latest song I've written, which I haven't got any music down to as yet, is called Leglocks Liberace. And that goes something like, I'm Leglocks Liberace, I'm exotic Adrian Street. I can make a deathloaf dainty. I can make a nutcracker sweet. I've got no candelabra, and I cannot play a note, but I hear a moonlight sonata every time I grab a throat. And that kind of goes on from there.
Before we go, I have one caller, and I'm going to put them on and welcome to Heartbeat Radio. You can say a few words to Adrian Street.
This is Diana Hart.
Oh, hi.
Adrian and Bruce. I'm so glad you guys could take my call. I have great memories of you. I just came from lunch with my brother Keith, and he said to please tell you you're both two of the nicest people he'd ever met, in not just in wrestling but in his life. And Keith said to tell you he's sorry, Adrian, for feeding you all the potatoes that you and Linda were. But he said
he said them to everyone else too. So
sorry, I remember you with your long blonde hair.
Ah, I remember you with your long brown hair, your long dark hair. You were in a business that's full of messy things and people who messed around. You two were two of the most devoted, totally loyal and devoted to each other, which is nice to see in entertainment and sports business.
And I know Davey Boy had the utmost respect for Adrian as
absolutely.
a wrestler and a friend too.
Yeah, he did. He said Adrian was very tough. Despite the image in the ring with the pink. You were just so ahead of your time, Adrian. But Davey said you
pointed
were
out earlier that
tough
Davey
as nails.
and Adrian started the same time in Calgary, and they were kind of both came over with Ted Bentley, who was kind of the man who sent them both over.
I didn't know that Ted had worked with Adrian as well. But Ted was
he was a very good friend of Adrian's. Adrian was just kind of talking about it a bit earlier. But in winding up, I'd just like to thank you, Adrian, for joining us. It was a real honor. I greatly enjoyed the stories, and I'd just like to thank you for everything you've done. You've been a huge influence on so many wrestlers, and I know my dad and my brothers and myself, we all had great respect for you and Linda, and you guys did a great job up here. So I'd just like to thank you again for all of that. You guys have been a great addition to the wrestling landscape. So thank you very much.
We want to thank Evan Ginzberg, the associate producer of The Wrestler, for coming on as a co-host. We want to thank Diana Hart and your brother Smith for calling in, and of course, Rip Rogers. That's it, another edition of Heartbeat Radio. We will see you next week. Bye for now.